September 11th, 2001. The day began with a spectacular late summer sun rising over New York City. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue, a morning brimming with the promise of perfect normalcy. At the southern tip of Manhattan, the twin towers of the World Trade Center stood as colossal monuments to commerce and ambition, their surfaces reflecting the serene beauty of the day. For millions it was simply a Tuesday. Down below, the city was in full motion. In the plaza of the World Trade Center, the daily rhythm was underway as thousands streamed from subways and ferries. They were bankers, lawyers, chefs, tourists, a microcosm of the world drawn to this epicenter of global finance. For them, the towers were the backdrop to their lives, a symbol of the city's relentless energy. The routine of an ordinary day had begun. A survivor recalled thinking only about a presentation at 10 a.m. A firefighter was finishing his shift, looking forward to his daughter's soccer game. These were the small details of ordinary lives. No one looked at the sky with any sense of foreboding. There was no premonition that in minutes their world would be irrevocably fractured. The hum of the city was a comforting sound, but another sound was fast approaching, unheard, tearing through the tranquil blue. At 8:46 a.m., the symphony was shattered, a deafening roar, then a cataclysmic explosion. American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into the North Tower, between the 93rd and 99th floors. The ordinary Tuesday morning ceased to exist. In its place, a gaping, fiery wound in the side of the skyscraper, belching thick, black smoke into the pristine sky. The impact sent a shockwave through the consciousness of everyone who witnessed it. On the streets below, time froze. A collective gasp rippled through the crowds as thousands of heads tilted upward. The first reaction was not terror, but sheer, uncomprehending disbelief. Was it an accident? A terrible mistake? The scale was too immense to process. Cell phones emerged as people tried to call loved ones, trying to make sense of the impossible sight. The air now carried the acrid scent of jet fuel and burning debris. Within minutes, the first sirens began to wail. News crews, initially reporting a potential fire, scrambled towards the unfolding catastrophe. Live television broadcasts cut from regular programming, showing the world the unbelievable image of the North Tower ablaze. The initial reports were fragmented, confused, but for the millions watching, a dreadful realization began to dawn. This was no accident, and as the world stared at the burning tower, no one could imagine the horror was only just beginning. September 11th, 2001, dawned as a crisp, clear, late summer morning in the northeastern United States. In New York City, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Below, the city hummed with its usual morning rhythm. Millions began their commute, heading to offices, schools, and appointments. In the twin towers of the World Trade Center, thousands were already at their desks, starting their workday with cups of coffee and conversations, completely unaware that they were living the final moments of a world they knew, and that in minutes their lives would be irrevocably altered by an unprecedented act of terror. At 8:46 a.m., that ordinary morning was shattered. American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 en route from Boston to Los Angeles, slammed into the North Tower. The impact between the 93rd and 99th floors created a horrifying spectacle of fire and smoke. Initial reports were chaotic and filled with confusion. News anchors, eyewitnesses, and even air traffic controllers struggled to comprehend what had happened. Was it a terrible accident? A small private plane gone astray? For 17 agonizing minutes, the world watched, bewildered, as the iconic skyscraper burned against the perfect blue sky, a gaping wound in the heart of the city. Then at 9:03 a.m., all doubt was erased. As news cameras from around the globe were trained on the burning North Tower, a second Boeing 767, United Airlines Flight 175, appeared in the sky. In a scene of unimaginable horror, broadcast live to a stunned global audience, the plane banked sharply and sliced into the South Tower between the 77th and 85th floors. The impact triggered a massive, fiery explosion that rained debris onto the streets below. In that moment, the truth became brutally clear. This was not an accident. This was a coordinated, deliberate attack on the United States. Inside the towers, chaos and terror reigned. For those above the impact zones, escape was nearly impossible. Below, a desperate evacuation began. Stanley Primnath, an executive at Fuji Bank on the 81st floor of the South Tower, saw Flight 175 coming directly at him. He screamed and dove under his desk just as the plane's wings sliced through his office. Miraculously, he survived the initial impact and was later found by Brian Clark, an executive from another company, who heard his cries for help. Together, they navigated smoke-filled, debris-strewn stairwells, among the very few to escape from that high up in the South Tower. Their story is a testament to the human will to survive against impossible odds. The horror was not confined to New York. At 9:37 a.m., the symbol of America's military might was struck. American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the western side of the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, causing a partial collapse of the massive building and igniting a ferocious fire. And a fourth hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was also in the air. Learning of the attacks in New York and Washington through phone calls, the passengers and crew made a courageous decision. They fought back. Their heroic struggle, immortalized in the final recorded words, "Let's roll," forced the hijackers to crash the plane into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at 10:03 a.m., thwarting what is believed to have been another attack aimed at a high-profile target in Washington, D.C., likely the U.S. Capitol or the White House. Back in Lower Manhattan, a scene of pandemonium unfolded. As thousands of people evacuated the burning towers and surrounding buildings, an army of first responders rushed in the opposite direction. Police officers, paramedics, and firefighters from across the city converged on the World Trade Center, ascending the stairs into a situation of unimaginable peril, determined to save as many lives as possible. On the streets below, crowds fled in terror, their faces etched with disbelief and fear as they looked back at the two wounded giants dominating the skyline, pouring thick black smoke into the pristine morning air. The city and the world held its breath, unaware that the most devastating moments were yet to come. In the heart of the unimaginable, as steel and glass rained down, a different story was unfolding on the ground. It wasn't a story of structures, but of people. It's a narrative written in the actions of survivors, the bravery of first responders, and the enduring love of families who lost everything. These are the human stories of September 11th, stories of ordinary individuals thrust into extraordinary circumstances, whose choices in moments of terror would come to define the very best of humanity.
Inside the towers, a vertical city was plunged into darkness and chaos. For tens of thousands, the only way out was down. Smoke-filled stairwells became arteries of survival, but also stages for profound humanity. Strangers held each other, guiding the injured, calming the panicked. In the face of death, they chose compassion. We saw people carrying a woman in a wheelchair down 68 flights. We heard stories of men like Wells Crowther, an equities trader who became a rescuer, his identity marked only by a red bandana, leading strangers to safety before returning to help more. He never made it out, but his actions saved at least a dozen lives.
While thousands fled down, hundreds of others were charging up. The firefighters of the FDNY, the officers of the NYPD and Port Authority Police, and the paramedics of the EMS faced a scene from their worst nightmares. They ran into the burning towers, their mission clear: save as many as you can. Each step up was a step into the unknown, a climb against time and physics. They were burdened by over 60 pounds of gear, yet their resolve was heavier still. They knew the risks were astronomical, but the code of their profession, the promise to protect, propelled them forward, into the smoke, into the fire, into history. 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, and 8 paramedics would not return.
This courage wasn't confined to those in uniform. As the towers fell, Lower Manhattan was cut off, trapping 500,000 people on an island of debris and fear. The U.S. Coast Guard put out an urgent open call for all available boats. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tugboats, ferries, private yachts, and fishing vessels, a spontaneous armada, converged on the Manhattan seawall. In what became the largest sea evacuation in history, these civilian mariners rescued an estimated 500,000 people, ferrying them to safety in New Jersey and Brooklyn. It was an act of maritime Dunkirk, a stunning display of ordinary people rising to an extraordinary challenge. On the streets, the collapse created a surreal monochrome world. A thick blanket of dust and debris covered everything, silencing the city. Out of this gray haze emerged ghostly figures, survivors caked in ash. Their business attire transformed into a uniform of trauma. They stumbled through the streets, disoriented, yet often not alone. In this apocalyptic landscape, strangers became saviors, offering a hand to guide, a shoulder to lean on, and providing comfort. They were a walking community of the wounded, bound by a shared, terrifying experience, their humanity shining through the thickest layer of dust.
In the days and weeks that followed, the site, now known as Ground Zero, became a place of both sacred memory and grueling work. The pile, a 16-acre mountain of twisted steel and concrete, smoldered for 99 days. Search and rescue teams worked tirelessly in hazardous conditions, combing through the debris. Initially, they searched for survivors, their efforts fueled by a desperate hope. But as hours turned into days, the mission shifted to one of recovery. It was a grim, heartbreaking task, performed with reverence and determination to bring the lost back home to their families.
And amidst the devastation, a single image pierced through the despair. 3 firefighters standing on a precarious mountain of rubble, raising an American flag. It wasn't a planned ceremony, it was a spontaneous act of defiance and hope. That photograph became an instant icon. It symbolized a nation wounded but not broken, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering resolve to rebuild, to remember, and to honor the fallen. It was a promise, hoisted against a backdrop of smoke and ruin, that light would eventually overcome the darkness.
For the families of the 2,977 victims, the heroism witnessed that day is inextricably linked to their profound loss. Our loved ones weren't just statistics. They were the heroes who stayed behind to help a colleague, the first responders who made the ultimate sacrifice, the passengers who fought back in the skies. Their memories are preserved in the stories of their final moments, in the love they left behind, and in the legacy of a nation that vowed never to forget their courage. Through our voices, we understand the true cost of that day and the enduring power of the human heart.
Show the collapse of both towers and the devastation in Lower Manhattan.
Highlight President Bush's address to the nation.
Feature global shock and mourning, candlelight vigils, world leaders' reactions.
Discuss the war on terror, U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, and heightened airport security.
Touch on cultural, political, and emotional scars.
Discuss the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and other institutional changes.
Show the 9/11's Memorial and Museum.
Voices of families ensuring the world never forgets.
September 11th, a day etched in memory, a tragedy that reshaped the world.